Hello, everyone. My name is Shay Manfredi, as some of you probably know from our introduction videos when class started a few weeks back. And I'd like to share with you today my environmental job presentation on the natural resources technician. So without further ado, let's hop right into it. Here we have a table of contents, but for the sake of brevity, I'm going to skip over this. Feel free to pause and take a closer look if you'd like context for the rest of this presentation. We're going to start off by introducing what natural resources are, because we can't understand what a natural resource technician's job is without understanding natural resources, right? So natural resources are just any components that can be found in the natural world, specifically that we can use. So this can include, as you can see on the bottom there, air and water. These are both very tangible natural resources, but also energy, right? And energy can be derived from these physical natural resources. And natural resources can be usable, as you can see in the middle there, by humans with or without modification. So take a boulder, for example. We can take a boulder and break it down into smaller pieces to form gravel for, say, a landscaper to use, right? Or we can have water, and water can be used on its own without any modification whatsoever. So just different ways to think about how different resources can be utilized. Here's just a picture kind of showing off a few different natural resources. See on the top left and bottom right there, we have sun, solar power and wind power respectively, which are both derived from natural resources, the sun and wind, which of course are invaluable given the amount of people that live in the world today. We need as many different sources of energy as possible, and those fulfill that. Let's also take a look at this graph showing the global trends of resource use. So this specifically is from 1900 to 2005. And as you can see, over time, it increases exponentially. So we can only imagine where we're at right now. You can also see the GDP line, which is increasing faster than the resource use, interestingly. So let's get into the overview of the actual job now that we understand resources and how they're being used today. So natural resource technicians basically occupy a very broad job, more specifically a field, because there's a ton of subtypes of natural resource technicians depending on the natural resource in question. So the focus of all natural resource technicians is conservation and preservation of natural resources. You can see these individuals here on the left are in a forest, and they're probably surveying the forest to make sure it's in good condition, because there's numerous natural resources that can be found in forests because they're a very biodiverse area. So keeping track of these things can be very, very important. So as I said, there's very varied natural resources. So even though they're in the forest, you could see natural resource technicians working in a barge in the ocean to monitor water quality, right? So again, very varied, but also very important. And because of the importance, it's an extremely useful position across the world, but we're going to get into that a little more later. So let's talk about the more technical aspects here. So we have the starting salary, which from one source I found is 1912 to 2059 an hour, which not too bad for an environmental job starting out. With the average salary varying very widely from 33,588 per year to 71,151 per year. And the reason for this variation is not only due to salary difference, but also because a lot of these natural resource technician positions are seasonal, just because a lot of natural resources, like I mentioned with the forest, vary widely depending on the time of the year that they're being surveyed. So they're not always required. Average hours, we got the 8-hour workday, right? And then the potential locations vary very widely as well, because as I mentioned, natural resources come from all over. So they fundamentally need to be basically anywhere there's a natural area. So some simple qualifications, these also vary from employer to employer, but most people require you to be 18 or over. You generally want to have prior fieldwork experience, a bachelor's degree in an environmental field. Internships never help on a resume, as I'm sure we all know. And research skills, analytical skills, and knowledge of the environment are all super important, because that basically boils down to what a natural resource technician is all about. So if you have those skills, it's pretty likely you will find a good job in the field of natural resource technician. So as far as the employment forecast goes, this ties back to what I was saying earlier with how useful of a job this is. Because it's so essential to the progression of society, it will always be useful, and therefore I can only see the necessity of this job increasing with the use of natural resources going forward. So employment can certainly see a steady rise as the population increases and the need for natural resources increases. So let's get into some fun facts here real quick to close out the presentation. And there are two main types of resources. We have renewable and non-renewable, which is basically just reusable and non-reusable. Many resources exist in different usable forms, such as water. We can take water and use it, and we can take ice and use it. And those have very different uses, even though it is essentially the same resource. And natural resources are arguably more important than man-made ones, simply because, I mean, let's look at it. We wouldn't have man-made resources unless we had natural resources first to build upon. So as far as the not so fun fact goes, a rising population does necessitate the use of more resources, which once again ties back to what I was saying before about how important this job is. And this increase of population has led to man-made resources taking a hold, sometimes over natural resources, as you can see on the right there with nuclear power, which isn't always a bad thing, but has a number of consequences of its own. So that's about it. Thank you so much for watching. Normally I'd have a Q&A right here as the rubric suggested, but because this is a recorded presentation, I can't really ask any of you questions directly, or you can't ask me questions either. So if you do have anything that you'd like to know from me, feel free to contact me. I'd be happy to let you know more about this field because I was very, very interested in it. And for a time in high school, I was even interested in becoming one myself. So I know my fair bit about it. And yeah, that's about it. Here's my references. And yeah, hope you enjoyed.